Everyone, how's it going? How was your summer? I know it's not quite summer for everyone. Most of the people in the United States that I know have hit summer, but as I lived in Europe for the last 6 years, our summers didn't hit till July most of the time, sometimes even one week into July. And I know that for my clients in Canada, it's a little bit different too. So as the weather warms up for the year, if you're living in a place where the weather is warming up, I truly hope everything is going well for you and you're looking forward to these next couple of months. So today, I thought the subject that I'm speaking to today is an interesting one because it actually popped into my mind recently at a family gathering at my parents' house recently. And my parents' house, they live in a beautiful neighborhood. The house is getting close to being about 40 years old. Initially, when the house was built, there was a swamp cooler. And so it was all about airflow, trying to get the air downstairs, which just did not happen a lot. Anyway, at some point in the last decade, they decided to get central air, central heating. I don't know if it has to do with my parents or if it's just because the house is old, but the main floor of my parents' house just does not get that cool in the summertime. And so anyway, there was a gathering at their house recently, and my cousin looked at me and she's like, "It's hot in here. Is it always this hot?" And I was like, "Yeah, summertime. Their kitchen gets hot." And she was just like, "What? Do they not have AC down here?" And I'm like, "They have these ducts like there and there, but for whatever reason, the air just doesn't seem to get down very easily." So I don't know all the ins and outs of central air, but that's just how it is in their house. And so it reminded my cousin of this friend of hers where they were doing some housework as well. And her friend's husband was trying to decide if they should put central air in the entire house or just save $2,000 or $3,000 and just do it in certain parts of the house, the hottest parts of the house or the top floor or something like that. Anyway, the AC guy looked at him and said, "That's the worst $3,000 you'll ever save." And I was just thinking about it. And if you live in Europe, my apologies for not quite understanding the AC thing in the United States. Houses really aren't built. When we lived in Europe, the houses were built in a way to work more with the earth, with the environment, so that they wouldn't get as hot in the summertime. Not to say that it's perfect. I know it's been changing with global warming, but anyway, so back to this phrase, that's the worst $3,000 you'll ever save. And as I started thinking about it, I just thought about like that idea of quality of life and the heat that could come and the lack of quality of life just in the name of saving money. So then there's this line that comes through here, the worst way to save money. And it got me thinking about all of these ways we try to be responsible and frugal and good, and nothing is wrong with all of those. And yet sometimes, what if it's possible that we don't spend to be responsible, frugal, and quote, good? Especially if you've been socialized as a woman, especially if you've been raised in any high demand systems, or for those who learned that comfort and pleasure just weren't safe or weren't for us. Okay. So if we were to talk about spending habits and where they come from, they don't come out of nowhere, right? We say habit for a reason. They can be shaped by attachment, conditioning, modeling from our parents, of course, nervous system states, and trauma imprints. Okay, so let's break this down. If you grew up with more of an anxious attachment, it's possible. What could that look like with respect to money? It could look like you overspending impulsively when you feel insecure, hoping a new purchase will soothe that emptiness or make you feel something or feel worth it in the moment. It's possible that you might spend on others to earn love or connection, okay? If you lean more to that avoidance side, it's possible that you might underspend or delay important decisions or feel overly self-reliant. You may not want to ask for help, or you wait too long to ask for help, or you, quote, save by never investing in yourself, even when it costs you ease, healing, and success. Now, if you have more of a disorganized attachment, your spending could feel chaotic. You might swing between binging and deprivation, overspending during nervous system spikes, and clamping down hard afterwards in shame or regret. Okay? So we're talking about spending with respect to attachment styles, But what I want you to kind of lean into is this idea of, how do I save or not spend with respect to my attachment style? Because all of this happens beneath the surface, and the nervous system plays a huge role. When we're dysregulated, we might make money decisions from survival mode, not from clarity. We might spend to fix a feeling, or we don't spend to avoid fear. So if you've ever had a spending pattern that didn't make sense to your logical brain, that could be why. Your body wasn't safe. Your subconscious was trying to protect you. But on the flip side of that, I do think there's something to be said for times that we have spent when it didn't make sense in our logical mind. I want to think about times where we have spent money where it didn't feel logical, but when we made the decision, we just knew in our body and our bones that it was for us. And taking that time to look back and see the energy behind decisions and actions and behaviors like that can be really helpful as well. I thought it could be helpful to just give you a few prompts to tap into this with respect to yourself. So if you're driving, don't start trying to write and drive. You could even pause the podcast to answer the questions out loud, because there's something to be said for answering out loud or writing it on paper, getting something from the inside to the outside of your body. So I thought it could be interesting to start with this question of, growing up, from your perspective, what were some of the worst ways your parents or caregivers saved money? Isn't that wild to think about? I think oftentimes we talk about best ways to save, worst ways to spend. What about worst ways we've saved? What are the worst ways, from your perspective, that somebody saved money? And if it's resonant, did those decisions impact your sense of safety or sufficiency? All right. And now let's move it to you. What are some of the worst ways you've saved money as an adult? Okay. Have you ever avoided paying for something you really needed, but then paid for it later in other ways? Maybe with respect to healthcare, not wanting to take the time or spend the money on dental care, dental checkups, but then having to pay for a big fat crown by the end. Interesting stuff. Or with divorces too. Sometimes people don't want to spend money on therapy. They say they don't have money to spend on therapy or coaching or getting professional support. Divorces are expensive and costly, and not just monetarily. Okay. All right. What are some of the best ways that you've spent money? Why am I asking this? Because I want you to think about times where investments really have truly changed your life, truly changed your quality of life, so that you can go back to that moment, the moment either when you made the decision or when you took the action and spent, maybe both. And I want you to check in with the energy that was behind those choices. What made it easy to make those decisions? Or if it was hard to make it, what did you anchor into knowing that was a decision for you to make? Was this decision logical, or did it come from somewhere else, a deeper knowing, deeper connection? And another question I want to ask is, when you hesitate to invest or self-invest, where do you think that comes from? Is there a belief behind that showing up? Is there like an I'm not worth it? Or maybe it's I'm not worth it, but it sounds more like we need to invest our extra money into my partner's mental health, or my kids this or my kids that. Okay, just check in there. There could be some fear around something being too risky. There could be shame that you need help. You should be able to figure it out alone. A lot of these ideas are examples of protective strategies rooted in attachment and nervous system conditioning. Okay. When I used to sell a lot more one-on-one coaching way back when, beginning of my coaching career, one thing that I would talk to my clients about is this idea of quantifying pain. And what does that mean? What I would talk to clients about is this idea of like, if you could quantify the pain of staying stuck, or the pain of what you've experienced over the years, what would that number be? What would that number be if you had to put a number on it? Okay. And if you knew that you could have gone back in time and somebody said, hey, if you spend this much money, you won't have to experience the level of suffering that you had to experience, does that shift for you? Because a lot of times, especially if if you grew up in the United States or perhaps Western culture, there's a lot of teaching and indoctrination about being happy enough here, satisfied enough while being here on earth, and so that we can be more happy in heaven or more happy in the life after. But there's something to be said for loving yourself enough to carve out joy, however that needs to look, whether that's through investing in coaching, investing in your career, investing in something like that, investing in, maybe it's the Pilates membership so you can see your friends every Tuesday, Thursday night. There's something to be said for living on this earth, doing more than merely surviving. And if you were socialized as a woman in Western culture, a lot of that socialization comes with you being the support figure for everybody else, like you revolving around your partner, like they are a son, or your children in their lives, but really losing yourself in all of it. Okay. And so quantifying years lost to burnout or energy spent spinning in the same patterns or the cost of not having tools or support, a lot of times we don't even recognize the suffering that's happening because we've been conditioned to think that, oh, that's normal, that's life. But what if it isn't? What if there's so much more to experience? What if there's so much more joy to live into while you're a human on this earth? There's a guy named, I think his name is Father Richard Rohr, and he's a Franciscan priest. And one thing that he mentioned in a book of his is that he said one place that Christians get it wrong is that they think that heaven is supposed to come after this life. And he continued to talk about this idea of we're supposed to figure out how to experience heaven while on earth. And I just love that so much because I don't think people are meant to suffer just because that's how life is, or suffer to wait for things to be better later. I've seen organizations use that as a method to control people and keep people silent. And we're meant to experience joy, and we're meant to be connected to ourselves and to our bodies and to that creative power that's inside of us. It's that intuitive knowing that's there as well. And so what's the cost of not accessing that? You deserve to feel alive in this life. You deserve to feel joy, exuberant joy. And if you aren't there, if you're struggling with that, what if it makes perfect sense to invest in yourself to clear any blocks that are keeping you from dialing into that? Because that might be more akin to your natural self: joy, happiness, positivity, creativity. And what if it's just getting the support to get those blocks removed? Okay. All right. So what does this mean for you? I want to leave you with this today. Next time you're considering a financial decision, maybe instead of asking, can I afford it? Ask yourself something like, what's the cost of not doing it? Am I making this choice from alignment or fear? Because the answers will always be nuanced based on your certain set of circumstances. Is this a pattern I'm repeating or a truth I'm reclaiming? Love that last one. Because sometimes the worst way to save money is saving it at the cost of your well-being. The more regulated your nervous system becomes, the easier it is to make these aligned, empowered, grounded decisions that come from this energy where you know if something's for you, even if it's stretched, even if it's uncomfortable. That isn't recklessness. That's growth. Okay. And it's you trusting yourself to know what's best for you, regardless of what other people around you are thinking. If you're in a partnership, yes, of course, it makes sense to consider your partner and other things like that. And it's also okay for you to be considerate and know what's best for you. Let's stop glorifying suffering in the name of saving money. Let's start spending in ways that support the version of us that we're becoming, right? And here I am. I have a coaching practice and I have certifications that I've sold and different things like that. But that doesn't mean that's always your answer. It could be getting that Berkey water filter. Like, It could be things like that, or investing in supplements, or again, things that bring you joy, getting a volleyball net in your backyard to playing with your kids. When you are dialed into this knowing part of you, which is at the root of every program that I offer, you will know what the answer is for you. All right. Thank you so much for being here today. I'd love to hear more of your thoughts on this. Find me on Instagram at Lindsay Pullman Coaching and share your story with me. Let me know what worst way to save stuck with you. I'm all ears. All right. Have the best week. Have the best day. We'll talk soon.